Friends, very happy morning to all of you. I welcome you all on this Sunday morning where we are going to discuss something pretty serious, I will say. It is on the CSR and the recent amendments, for which we have our beloved speaker from Bombay, C.A. Zubin Bilimoria, and also joining with us, apart from Abhishek Billi, Secretary of CRC, is G. Shekhar sir, Central Council member. In fact, this one topic is one which was there in our mind and which we have missed for last few months when we wanted to have. And then when I was in touch with Manish Bhai, I was able to get the right speaker, CA Zubin Bilimoria, who himself is a author on book on CSR. And with the constant amendments and the latest one coming on 13 January, where they said that COVID-19 activities also can be taken as CSR activity, we will request our beloved speaker to touch upon all the aspects so that tomorrow when we go back, you'll be able to know all the important amendments and the basics about the CSR. Before I request Abhishek Murli to introduce the speaker, I will request our beloved Central Council member, the senior most Central Council member, G. Shekhar sir, to address the gathering. Shekhar sir, over to you, please.
Thank you, DC Jain. Thank you, Abhishek Murali, our respected speaker from Mumbai. The corporate social responsibility, in my opinion, which has been made statutory in 2013. But I would like to share very happily our Indian system of living is taking care of this society. See, the dharma, charity, helping others, helping the needy people, helping to the situation. It is part of the process of life for our country, our tradition, our legacy. Because in Kautilya's Arthasastra, they say the older people, the older generations, they used to keep a portion of their earnings only for the society. Corporate social responsibility, today we are making it a statutory, whether it is an allowable expenditure or not. If it is not an allowable expenditure, why not allowable? All are legal. But what I would like to say, our system of living, Indian system of living, start with helping the creators of this society, this world. I can share with you in this auspicious occasion of Makara Sankranti, the Tamil Nadu tradition, how our tradition starts with helping the society. Our family people, outside the house, put kolam, what it is called rangoli, outside the house. But in villages, they will not use the powder for kolam, this powder from the stones. They use the rice flavor to put the columns. The simple reason is the ant, the crow, the birds will come and eat that rice flavor in the morning. This is how the tradition starts, their culture starts from the day morning. And after that, when they cook, before starting their breakfast or lunch, whatever they cook, first they put it to a crow, call the birds. Why I am telling all these things? This type of attitude is inbuilt in our tradition. Share something every day with others. Now it is coming statutorily. That's what it is more painful in this country. Share always something with the society is our culture, our tradition today, which is coming as a statutory point. Even without this corporate social responsibility, our ancient business community, you can see the Tata Memorial Hospital, Tata Memorial Fund. Even I can very proudly say, whether Mr. Jain knows that or not, I have to very share with you, in the South Indian business, there is a business community called TVS Business Community. I want to share my own experience. My father was a laborer in railway. TVS Group, they had a fund called TVS Charities. I'm talking about not now, nearly 54 years back, 1966-67, my brother came out of the school. My father is finding difficult to pay the college fees. One of my family friends said, your son got a very good mark. TVS Charities is having a scheme to educate this type of people. Why not with your mark sheet, just like that, you can make an application. My father prepared the application, applied. No recommendation, nothing. Those days, 150 rupees they sent to meet my brother's education. I am talking about 1967-68. It is a real truth. Why no? I am sharing this information. Recently, I met one of the directors of TVS. They said, sir, yearly 1,500 students we are distributing according to the things. This is almost last 75, 80 years they are doing without any law called corporate social responsibility. So today we are having a topic as a discussion. I don't want to tell what are the communities, business community, how they are doing for taking care of this social responsibility. But I would like to share, it is not only corporate social responsibility, it is citizen social responsibility also. That's the reason I always used to tell my professionals, our professionals, wherever I go, businessmen can do charity. We professionals shall not do charity with the business people. Some clients we are providing service, charge them, take the fees, make it as a pipeline to give it to where the needy people are there. Charity, businessmen can do charity, but professional can also do charity. But the charity is not with the earning community, only with the community, with our needy community, not with the earning community. So because I have seen the members, sir, I want to do, sir, something I want to do. No free service. We do the free service, collect from the earners, pass it on to the needers. So we are having an excellent speaker. I heard about the today's speaker, but I am not able to listen to him. Sir, you have to kindly excuse me because I was in the another conference meeting. Jain pulled me here. I was addressing the international conference because they started little late. It is my session is between 10:15 to 10:30. So, but what happened? They started little late. So I was sitting there. So Jain said, no, sir, you have to come immediately. So I moved from that session. So I have to go back to the session. I congratulate the participant. You got a very nice opportunity to enrich your knowledge. Every time I used to tell, learning is a life process for the professionals. So you have got an opportunity to learning. That process will get you the earning of name, fame, respect, everything. All the best for you. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much for sparing your valuable time.
Sir.
Thank you.
Thank you for rightfully touching upon the professional social responsibility also in your own style, actually. And sir, you were talking about that column. Since we have all gone more urban, the columns have stopped. So that is why the government also thought that let's put it something forcefully also, so that people are able to do something. But as rightfully touched by
Sir, what I am telling today we are living in flats. This is what I would like to share because we are all professional. We are living in flats, the olden days of the street column, everything. But 16 flats in a place, why not we give an employment to one lady who knows the column every day, putting good column outside our flats on the street, on a good road. One side we are giving employment, other side we are doing charity for these birds. See, only ultimately I always would say, The attitude determines the altitude. Only the aspiration and attitude is necessary. Do something, then automatically situation starts. Don't take excuses. Today the generation, metro, all things. Ultimately, we are humans. Ultimately, we are humans. Place is not changed. Person we changed. We have to accept. We think not giving importance to that. That's a problem.
So you spoke my heart. I was coming to that. Though we stay in urban doesn't mean that charity has stopped. In fact, it is continuing. Only thing is that there was an additional responsibility cast on the companies to see that for those companies who are not doing, they do at least the minimum basics actually. Probably if you take the data and statistics, there are companies who have been doing beyond what is actually required by the statute and the mandate. So thank you so much, Shekhar sir, for your words of wisdom. Now I'll request the Abhishek Murli to kindly introduce the speaker.
Thank you so much, Dynamic Chairman of SIRC, CA Dungarshan Jain, our beloved Central Council member, CA G. Shekhar sir, and our speaker for the day, CA Zubin Billy Moria, who's joining us live from Mumbai. Shekhar sir very beautifully touched upon the historical and cultural aspects of the history of India and how a social responsibility, not necessarily corporate, but a social responsibility is inherent. And needless to say, I think the CSR being implemented in the Companies Act, being a recent development, has definitely been something of a landmark amendment as far as India is concerned. We have been used to corporates using the public resources and not giving back. And so, and the profit-oriented approach has now evolved into a stakeholder-based approach. In fact, it must add, and I'm sure our speaker may touch upon these aspects, where there are certain FMCG companies that are using the opportunity of marketing to rural areas as a CSR expenditure and claiming that in their CSR spend. But really, even though it is an outreach, it is effectively a marketing procedure. So therefore, there are avenues of planning. At the same time, the objectives of CSR or what the purpose of CSR may be not being met based on these circumstances. So I am sure the participants here today range from not only practicing members, but people from the industry side as well. And you'll all be able to appreciate the inputs that our speaker will give in today. And now that comes the opportunity to introduce such a well-respected speaker that we have today with us, CA Zubin Billy Moria, sir. He is a chartered accountant and a cost accountant and a company secretary, and he has more than 3 decades of working experience with a multinational firm, and he was a partner of the firm as well. Now he's practicing in his own name, in his own firm in Mumbai, and he has been involved in a wide spectrum of clients across several industries, including banks, financial institutions, real estate companies, hotels, charitable trusts, and much more. In fact, in the last few years, he shifted from the traditional audit and attest practice to a consultancy and advisory mode, where he has been advising corporates on internal controls, implementation of ICFR, CSR implementation, and specialized training for corporates and individuals as well. In fact, he is a regular speaker at various professional forums, including ICAI, WIRC, the Peer Review Board of ICAI, Lions Club, BCAS on various topics. He worked as a member of the study group of the Auditing and Assurance Standard Boards of ICAI and drafted the revised guidance note on the bank audit from 2008 onwards. In fact, he is also part of the expert advisory team for drafting of opinions on accounting matters. He's a technical reviewer of the ICAI and a managing committee member of the BCAS, so the Bombay Chartered Accountants Society, and also a member of their Accounting and Auditing Journal and Corporate Laws Committee. He is a guest faculty at very leading professional services firm, conducting sessions on Ind AS, IFRS, and is also the president of the Lions Club of Bombay Host, which is the premier Lions Club in the country, and served as for the year 1920 and was also treasurer in 2017-18. It does not end there. He is also a very famous author. He's authored several books, including Auditor's Perspective to Companies Act 2013, published by CCH, NBFCs in India, a treatise published by the BCAS, Changing Paradigms of Corporate Social Responsibility in India, published by the BCAS in December 2018, which is also today's topic. CA Billy Moria, sir, thank you so much for accepting our invitation to be here with us today. We welcome you. We're looking forward to your presentation.
Thank you very much to the distinguished office bearers, CA Dungarchand Jain, Chairman, Abhishek Murali, Secretary, and the respected Senior Council Member, CA G. Shekhar. It is indeed a privilege for me to address the fraternity in the southern part of India. I think this is the first time I am addressing people in the southern part of India. So I look forward to the interaction on a topic which is very dear to my heart. Some of the introductory remarks and the earlier perspectives of CSR, which Mr. Shekhar covered, have also been the starting point of my book. The religious, the personal, the social responsibilities which are there. He has also referred to Kautilya's book, which I have also made a reference to that. So it is all very true that CSR was something which was there, but unfortunately it was very limited. People who were doing it for generations only were doing it. It was not spreading its wings. So it is because of that that the government thought it fit to put together a legislation which many experts say is one of its kind really in the world. There are CSR prescriptions in other countries which are there, but not to the degree and extent in which they are in our country, where it is mandated. And it is because of this mandating of CSR, it has become an activity by itself. One other way of looking at CSR is not only corporate social responsibility, but it is actually corporate services which we are providing. And unfortunately, the word corporate being there, it has become corporatized. It has become very commercialized. There are advantages of it becoming commercialized. There are advantages of it becoming disadvantages. It has become more professional. There are advantages of that and there are disadvantages. It depends upon how you really implement the provisions in the true spirit, rather than complying it as a checkbox and a tick box or a checklist. So it has to be complied in spirit and not in letter. And then there are certain other aspects which are there. As the topic is that I will be covering only the recent amendments. The broad basic provisions, all of you are already aware, they are now there on the statute book for nearly 7 years. There have been recent amendments in the last 2 years, which I will be touching upon. Quite a few of them which have not still been notified, but which are still important. And the entire CSR has gone onto a different plane, unfortunately or fortunately, because of the COVID pandemic situation which we are in. And one of the provisions dealing with vaccines and all, and the related, whether they are allowed as a CSR expenditure and all that. So this is where the provisions come to the benefit of the society in general. So we will look at all these things and then focus really on the changing paradigms. There are certain key themes which are there, which I have also touched upon in my book, which was published about 2 years back with the kind permission of the Bombay Chartered Accountants Society. I don't know whether in Chennai the book is available for those of you who are interested. Otherwise, I can make arrangements. I can check up with the Bombay Chartered Accountants Society whether they will be able to send the book if there are many people who are interested. For those of you who are interested, I can just very briefly put up on the screen that this is essentially the book which is there. To the best of my knowledge, generally this is only locally available through the BCAS, but there we can explore the arrangement of maybe whether it can be ordered online or whether it can be couriered or whatever, if there are enough number of people who are interested in going through it, because it really covers the entire gamut. though of course it is not updated because this is as of 2017-18, but again this is covering the various aspects which Mr. Shekhar also touched upon, so which may be of interest to the practitioners, to the NGOs, to the people in the industry who are involved in managing and implementing CSR activities. So with that brief background, I will now straight away dive into my presentation, maybe which should take about around 90 to 95 minutes. And then maybe we can have some question answers in the end. I would prefer if the question answers are in the end rather than in the middle. So of course, members may say, so desire, maybe we can just have a brief 2 to 5 minute break in the middle at a certain point of time. Just if somebody wants to just freshen up or relieve themselves or whatever, we'll see how it goes. So with that, I would like to get on to my presentation and start sharing my screen. Is the screen visible?
No, sir, we have lost your audio as well. You click the other button.
Audio is there, video is gone.
Okay, can you?
The third option. No, it's not visible. Just click on the third option right below the video.
It is not visible yet.
Is it there now? Third option, yes.
No, sir, no. The option below the video button, sir.
Below mute or below?
Below the video
No,
button, there is a share screen option, sir. Check.
The two windows, sir.
Now it's visible.
Yes, yes.
Now it's visible. Okay, yes, I think I clicked on the earlier button. Okay, is it visible now?
Yes, sir. Yes.
Okay. See, I will be covering my presentation in 3 parts. As I discussed earlier, the recent amendments in the CSR provisions, the changing paradigms of CSR in India, and the broad professional dimensions of CSR. Now, the amendments in the CSR provisions, I have tried to divide them into 3 different elements. COVID-19 being the flavor of the season, I have specifically dealt with several recent COVID-related amendments, certain connected amendments also in Schedule 7, and then there have been several procedural and administrative amendments also which have happened over the last maybe 1.5 to 2 years, so which is what I will be covering. Now, COVID-related amendments. The first major amendment is that the COVID-related spending would be considered as CSR spends. And for that, the MCA has clarified that the funds may be spent in terms of item number 1 and item number 12 of Schedule 7, which is essentially prevention of healthcare and sanitation and disaster management. So COVID-related spendings would be eligible under these 2 broad areas as clarified by the MCA via its circular. The second and a very important amendment is that the companies who are engaged in R&D activities for new vaccines, drugs, and medical devices in the normal course of business may undertake similar activities for COVID-19. And this is permitted for not only the current financial year, but for the 2 subsequent financial years also, subject to certain conditions. They should be in collaboration with certain institutions or organizations who are specified in Schedule 7, item code 9, and the details have to be given in the annual report. So these are inserted via a notification dated August 20th via the CSR rules. So this is something again which is notified. So this is where again it is a double-edged sword. Something which will benefit the society will also be a bonanza for the pharmaceutical companies. So COVID, in a way, though it has brought about untold suffering, it has also been a silver lining whether fortunately or unfortunately, even for a lot of R&D and pharmaceutical companies. There are other matters connected with that which we may debate till the cows go home, but that is not really whether it is ethical, not ethical, whether the entire COVID related situation, we see a lot of messages on social media. I don't want to get into all those matters in this forum. But the fact of the matter is that now vaccines have also seen the light of day. Yesterday was the first day. So hopefully the things will now improve and we will be able to move forward. Now, connected with the COVID, there were certain FAQs, because as is the case with any laws, any circulars or any amendments, people try to interpret things in their own ways. So normally the government has to come out with a lot of clarificatory circulars. So certain clarifications have been made via FAQs. Contribution to the Chief Minister's Relief Fund is not included. Prime Minister's Relief Fund was always there, but Chief Minister's is not there. Whether that is right or wrong is a matter of debate. Contribution to the State Disaster Management Authority qualifies for CSR. Payments of salaries and wages to workers during lockdown. That has been clarified categorically that that does not qualify for CSR. You may continue to pay your workers, but this does not qualify for CSR. Any ex gratia payments to temporary, casual or daily wage workers fighting COVID-19 has to be qualified as a CSR expenditure. Now again here, as is the case with many of our laws and rules, there has to be an explicit declaration given by the board of directors, duly certified by the statutory auditor. Now this is interesting. Now how does a statutory auditor certify that the ex gratia payments to temporary, casual or daily wage workers for fighting COVID? So essentially now what sort of payments really get covered? These are whether a consumer goods company or whether an IT services company, taking an example, it makes ex gratia payments to temporary, casual or daily wage workers for fighting COVID. See, for an IT service company, what does fighting COVID mean? There are 2 or 3 ways of looking at it. They are probably helping people set up certain COVID related protocols. So those are the type of expenses for which they may have to take somebody's help, or they may have to probably ramp up their production to meet certain requirements, additional requirements which may arise because of COVID. For example, manufacturing masks, PPE kits and so on. I'm just taking loud examples. So you may have to employ additional casual workers for that. So you may have to, you don't employ them on a full-time basis, but employ them on a contractual basis. So those ex gratia payments. So what are the type of things which are covered has not been explicitly specified. So this is again something which can be subject to a lot of interpretations. Even for the statutory auditors, I think it may be a challenge to certify. So we have to be very careful. So the dividing line between normal salaries and wages and ex gratia payments is very gray. It is not very clear in black and white. What about expenses? You may employ a separate security person, for example, to check temperature of people attending the office. Maybe those type of payments could be, especially if earlier you were not incurring those type of expenses. However, these are all again areas which are all subject to different interpretations. but this is again important. The fact of the matter is that, see, you are incurring the expense. You are, whichever way you are doing good. Now, whether it qualifies for CSR or not is only an incidental thing. But at the same time, it is something which we have to take into account, because some companies may probably cut down on the other expenditure on CSR because of economic difficulties due to the lockdown, but they may incur these expenses, and at the same time, it may help them to do a tick in the box to comply with the CSR related requirements. So maybe these are some of the factors which need to be considered. Am I going at the right pace?
Yes,
Is
sir,
it
no
okay?
problem. You can continue, sir.
No problem.
Yes, yes.
Yes. Then there are specific amendments to Schedule 7, mainly under item 9, which was referred to in the earlier slide also. Contributions to incubators for R&D projects. So that was there. This is irrespective of COVID, and even contribution to certain universities for conducting certain specified forms of research. So those items were already there in the amended Schedule 7 even before the COVID related amendments. And then the COVID related amendments have been linked, the contributions and all that, whatever R&D is done related to these specified institutions. So these are the general COVID related amendments which are there. Now we go on to the procedural and administrative matters, which I have, over the last 2-3 years, I have divided it into 4 broad areas, out of which only the 2017 Amendment Act is notified and on the statute book. The 2019 Amendment Act, to the best of my knowledge, is not yet notified. The Companies Bill 2020 proposed is also not yet, it is still a bill. And the CSR amendment rules, so some of them we saw have been notified by the August circular. Some of them are still proposed rules which are there. So let us briefly go through that. Some of them are purely technical and procedural, which I won't spend too much time. Expression any financial year is immediately preceding financial year substituted. That is more for determining your eligibility limits in terms of 135 subsection 1, whether you are covered or not, your net profit, net worth, turnover criteria. A proviso is inserted whereby company which is not required to appoint an independent director shall have 2 or more directors. That is also straightforward. Now subsection 3. See, it earlier there was a requirement 135 subsection 3 that the areas matter specified in Schedule 7. Now it is become a little broad-based and inclusive to say areas or subjects. So this is just to make it a little more broad-based, so which is a welcome amendment. Then an explanation has been inserted below subsection 5. Now, as all of you are aware, there is a particular manner of determining the net profit. You have to include certain items and exclude certain items, as you used to earlier do for the purposes of determining the limits for managerial remuneration. So there, I think net profit, it is very just clearly stating that the net profit shall not include the prescribed sums and shall be calculated in terms of section 198, which is the section which lays down the provisions for computation for determining the limits for the managerial remuneration. Instead of the average net profit, it says that it has to include and it has to exclude certain items. What are the items to be included or excluded are already those which are already there. Those have not been amended. This is just more in the nature of a clarification which is there. Now there is a third proviso inserted below subsection 5, whereby any excess spending above the prescribed limits can be carried forward to the succeeding year. And especially this is important in those times where companies may have to incur additional expenditure. They may cut down on their expenditure. See, there is a feeling that you can probably trade in these excess amounts and maybe pass it on to the others and so on. once the proposed social stock exchange really comes into being. So that is one of the purposes, possible purposes why this amendment has been there. Then earlier the amendment stated that there were a lot of penalties which were prescribed. Now the word penalty has been dropped and fines have been laid down. And another welcome procedural amendment which is there is that the CSR spending should not exceed 50 lakhs. There is no need to form a CSR committee. So this is the Companies Bill 2020 which is proposed. I think Companies Amendment Act 2019, the 3 immediately preceding years, it is clarifying that if there are lesser number of years for a newly incorporated company, it means the number of years. Then the next 2 amendments are important. It talks about unspent amount. Unspent amount is what is referred to for an ongoing project. What is an ongoing project? We will look at it a little later. So if it is unspent on an ongoing project, it shall be transferred to a fund specified at the end of the financial year if it is other than if it is an ongoing project. If it is an unspent amount pertaining to an ongoing project, it has to be transferred within. I think here there is a typo error. I think unspent amount relating to an other than an ongoing project shall be transferred within 6 months. And for an ongoing project, it has to be transferred within a period of 3 years to a specific fund specified in Schedule 7. I think that relates to an ongoing project instead of an other than an ongoing project. It has to be read. I think there is a typo error in that, in the second bullet. So that may please be noted. Now this is again in sync with certain amendments which are there in the rules which are there. We saw the 2020 proposed amendments which are more procedural in nature. Now the amendment to the rules, these are certain, some of them are far-reaching changes which are there. There is a change in the basic definition of CSR, change in the definition of CSR policy. There is a new definition of international organization which is inserted, Rule 21F, and the existing Rule 21F definition of net profit has been renumbered as Rule 21G. There is a definition of ongoing project which we saw earlier, because that is going to be an important thing, what is an ongoing project and what is not, because that would determine when and how much and at what point of time the amount has to be transferred to different categories of funds. And then on CSR implementation and CSR expenditure, there are certain amendments which are there, which we will go through. CSR now, the definition is very specific. Projects or programs relating to activities or areas. We saw that earlier. And this is again pursuant to the recommendations of the CSR committee. The board will then determine. So projects or programs relating to activities or areas undertaken by the board pursuant to the CSR committee recommendations as per the declared policy subject to Schedule 7 and to the relating to the programs or activities or areas specified in Schedule 7. So essentially now it only what it does is it provides a negative list against the earlier current and broad definition. So activities undertaken in the normal course of business are excluded, except certain COVID related activities which are discussed earlier. So the point which the secretary was making, FMCG companies and all doing things in their area and all that, whether and to what extent it can still be considered, we have to be very careful, because it should not be something which has to be there in the normal course of business. So that has to be very carefully seen. Except some of it, if you are doing really towards COVID related measures, you are giving food grains or certain provisions to migrant laborers. Now, whether that would be covered as COVID related activities, yes or no, maybe. So that those are some of the gray areas which will be there. Activities outside India continue to be excluded. Contributions to any political party party also continue to be excluded, and activities significantly benefiting the employees. See, earlier, or as things stand now, even activities benefiting the employees are excluded. Now here there has been a slight modification, that if we are activities which are benefiting but they are less than 25% and 75% of those activities benefit others, then it may be permissible. Earlier, anything for the employees was totally excluded, even if it was in conjunction with some other activities. Now, if you are doing something in conjunction with your other activities, then that is permissible. For example, if you are running a hospital and you provide free beds to your employees, but that is less than 25%, that can now be probably considered as a CSR activity. This is one of the examples. So this is where though there are negative activities, two activities B and C remain negative earlier and remain negative even currently, because activities undertaken outside India and contributions to any political party. But in the normal course of business, there are some relaxations in respect of COVID related items and activities significantly benefiting the employees. Only those are excluded, otherwise they can be considered as COVID. These are all amendments, proposed amendments to the definition. Now the CSR policy, again, this is more of a, it is a statement containing the approach and direction of the board based on the recommendations and covers selection, implementation and monitoring. This is more of a procedural amendment really, so nothing much. Definition of an international organization. See, it is a central government notified organization under the United Nations Privileges and Immunities Act, to which the provisions of the schedule to the said act apply. We will see how this definition is relevant, because this will be relevant in the context of certain other proposed amendments for appointing implementing agencies and mandatory monitoring of appointment of implementing agencies. In that context, we will just see that in a couple of slides later. So this is one specific definition. Now, ongoing project. They are essentially projects which are carried on over a period of more than 1 year, but not exceeding 3 years. Will also include projects not initially approved as such, but which extend beyond the year based on board approval. Now, this is again when the proposed amendment comes into being. You will have to identify what out of your existing projects are ongoing. Because as of now, the way things are, there is nothing like an ongoing project definition. Once these amendments and rules are notified, your existing projects, you will have to see if some of them will continue beyond more than a period of 1 year. The board will have to specifically approve those with a reasonable justification. And then this is important for determining the utilization and the transfer of funds, which we saw as per the 2019 amendment. Now it is not clear as to whether extension beyond the period of 3 years is permissible. So that is again one gray area. Suppose something stretches on for 4 years or 5 years. Whether I think the government or the Ministry of Corporate Affairs or any agency, other agency has the powers to approve those as ongoing projects is something which is not clear. Hopefully it will be clarified once the amendments are also notified. Now the CSR implementation. Now there is a slight change. It can be done by an entity registered under the Act of Parliament, or by a Section 8 company, or by the company itself. Now this entity registered under an Act of Parliament or state legislation means certain statutory bodies. Now this implies or seems to imply that public charitable trust and registered society would no longer be considered as implementing agencies. As things stand now, a lot of the work, lot of the CSR activities used to be done through the trusts. Now it is there now whether these trusts are an entity registered under an act of parliament or state legislature. The charitable trusts get approval of the charity commissioner, and they are also state acts which are there. So maybe they could be considered. Societies registered under the Societies Registration Act, if an NGO is under that, it could be considered. But an unincorporated body of persons or an individual's association of persons which may be doing charitable work, social work, and NGOs which are not an entity registered in terms, whether they would be covered or not is again not clear. So this is one far-reaching amendment which is there. Collaboration is permissible beyond there is separate reporting, that is always there. As I said, international organization may be engaged for monitoring and evaluation. They may monitor and evaluate certain projects, the feasibility, technical feasibility, and all those things which we will see later. But actual implementation cannot be done by them. They may only play an advisory role. Actual implementation will only with the help of central government approval. And there have been other amendments also that now the funds also have to be in a separate bank account, and the monitoring, utilization, and all those things are also connected there. Then up to now, the disclosure on the website was only in terms of whatever was given in the director's report. Now I think even the composition of the committee, CSR quality, and projects approved have also to be all disclosed in the board report. This was something which was not clear earlier. Now it is clarified. Some companies were giving these disclosures, some companies were not. So now that is being clarified explicitly. Now administrative overheads not to exceed 5%, except as indicated below. Now here again, companies with a mandatory spending of 5 crores or more in the 3 immediately preceding financial years have to get a mandatory impact assessment done, and such companies can have administrative overheads up to 10%. So if your CSR eligible spending is more than 5 crores in the 3 immediately preceding years, you have to ensure that the proper impact assessment is done of your spendings. Surplus can be plowed back to the same project, or it can be transferred to an unspent CSR account. We already looked at that. An unspent balance on the commencement of these rules, once they are notified for other than ongoing projects, have to be transferred within 30 days to the special account. If they are not spent, again within 3 financial years, to the fund transferred in Schedule 7. So the transitory provision, once the new rules are notified, will come into the picture. These aspects will also be important in the context of our CARO reporting, because CARO has also added 2 clauses in line with these amendments. So we will have to report as statutory auditors even in terms of CARO once the amendments and the rules are notified, because CARO also is now applicable for the current financial year beginning from 1st April 2020. Okay, so this essentially covers the various CSR amendments in a nutshell. Predominantly, they are in terms of COVID. There are certain procedural amendments also which are there, most of which are beneficial, but some of which there is no clarity as to whether extension of ongoing projects, whether you can do through these charitable trusts, NGOs and all, which may not have been specifically incorporated under a statute, and similarly such type of things. Otherwise, most of the things, it has basically just clarified certain implementation challenges which we have been encountering so far. So now we go on to the second part, which is now the way we look at it. See, all the amendments are there, all the rules and regulations are there. How do you actually implement it? What are the consequences? What are the impacts? What are the effects because of these? Are what I have tried to put together in terms of some 5 basic paradigms which have changed. There would be commercialization, there would be professionalism. These are the 2 most critical things. Whether there will be greater transparency. Employee engagement, that procedure has changed. Because see, earlier in our country, CSR was to a great extent equated with basically serving your employees or taking care of your employees. That was also considered as part of a social responsibility, because employees are also important stakeholders. And in any activity in India, we cannot escape politics or politicization. So that also, again, to what extent that will impact, whether some of the COVID-related amendments also have political overtones. Prime Minister's Fund included, Chief Minister's Fund excluded, for example. So what is the reason? So it is ultimately a form of politics, because it is politics has been brought in to some extent. So these are the changing paradigms which are there. We will briefly touch upon this in the context of the amendments and the provisions as they were existing even prior to the amendments. What is commercialization? See, commercialization is anything which is done in a systematic and formalized manner. Anything which is thrust upon us, we are forced to do. And then once we do it, we have to do it in a proper manner. See, earlier, as Mr. Shekhar also mentioned, it was largely a voluntary concept. But now it is being made mandatory. And the commercialization kicks in because you have to have a policy, you need to form a committee, you need to monitor, you need to implement, and so on and so forth, impact assessment. So all this is ultimately commercialization. So it basically covers various aspects like when, where, what, and how to launch such activities within the ethical and legal boundaries, and keeping in mind the interests of the various stakeholders. See, there are also other broader dimensions of CSR now, whether it is basically talks about, there is a concept of a business responsibility report. So it deals with how you deal with your various stakeholders. Environmental considerations. So ESG considerations is another thing. Environmental, social, and governance. So these are all broader things which are emerging. There is a concept of an integrated report, concept of sustainability reporting, which some companies are also doing. So all these are all offshoots, basically. So now these are some of the things which need to be kept in mind by the CSR committee and the management when framing the CSR policy. We need to ensure that you do not make any political contributions. It should not be something which is part of your business. Employee engagement related activities should be excluded, and once the amendment comes in, it may be included, but then it needs to be that it is to be less than 25% of an activity which we are doing, the beneficiaries. So these are all things which necessary. Commercialization means basically in a structured, formalized manner. You have to follow certain rules, regulations, legal provisions also, certain ethical considerations, everything. So now these are certain specific aspects which would need to be kept in mind while framing CSR policies, as I mentioned. See, what are the activities on which you can incur? The activities under the normal costs you cannot. Primarily benefiting employees will not be considered. Political parties we see, those are not. So these are all the aspects. See, people have to apply their mind. That is the whole idea while framing a policy. It is not just you can write any check and give it to anybody, or just do anything that you want. It has to be within the boundaries and parameters which are laid down. It also specifies how the surplus can be utilized, how funds have to be transferred going forward. So all these are all offshoots of commercialization. These are all the factors which contribute to greater commercialization and more formalization of CSR related activities. Now you can also, anybody just cannot do it. You have to do it either through a registered trust or a society, company established, or a holding or a subsidiary or associate company. So as I said, the proposed amendments, especially now whether and to what extent trusts and societies will be covered, we'll have to see. Then see, there are also rules laid down that the companies, especially if you do it through outside implementing agencies, they have to have a 3-year track record. So it cannot just be anybody and everybody. The company must specify the projects or the programs. You have to, the policy has to be laid down, and then specific projects or programs. So there is a lot of work which is laid down. So all these are things which need to be looked at. Modalities for the utilization, monitoring, reporting. See, all these are all things which, like you do a normal business activity, CSR is in a way now like a normal business activity. As we will see later on, there are various other dimensions also when we say that it is part of a business activity. See, so many aspects come into the picture when we see that how does commercialization creep in. You need to be aware of each of these things. Rules also provide that the companies may build CSR capacities to their own personnel or through implementing agencies having a track record. Then there is also a limit on the spending, 5%, and then we saw as per the proposed amendments, especially where mandatory impact assessment is there, if the spending is over 5 crores, you can go to 10%. Then collaboration and all that is there, then mandatory engagement of implementing agencies as and when the rules are notified. Then another aspect is, see, what about companies which are already doing something, especially for the benefit of the employees and their families? They now have to really look at other things. Either they may have to reduce those expenditure, or they may continue incurring those expenditure, but they may have to now incur additional expenditure which falls within the parameters of CSR and the Schedule 7. So this may lead to reduction in the distributable profits and lower returns to the shareholders. So that you have to balance the interests of various stakeholders also. So you have to engage in a dialogue with the various stakeholders. So it is not as easy or simple as it sounds. That is the long and short of it. There are various aspects which need to be kept in mind as if you are doing a normal business or a commercial activity. So CSR essentially is now part and parcel of a business or a commercial activity. Earlier it may have been voluntarily done. Now also you may do it voluntarily, but at the same time voluntarily you have to also follow certain parameters. Whether it is a good thing or a bad thing is something which we can argue and debate. But the way the things are, this is the way you have to do it. So that is what makes it commercialized to a great extent. Then commercialization, after commercialization, if something has to be commercialized, if something has to be in the form of a business, if something is to be done in a formalized manner, naturally it would result and need greater professionalism. So professionalism is really inevitable, and it is an offshoot of commercialization. So many companies have to take the help of various classes of professionals, and we will be discussing the professional aspects of CSR separately in the later part of the presentation, because you may need a lot of professional help to formulate customized CSR strategies aligned with our core values. So there has to be some synergy with the type of business activities which you are doing, because that is where your core competency is. So in those areas, you will be able to give that better to the society, subject of course to the regulatory requirements. There will be opportunities for professionals like us, but if you look at it at the other side, it will be increasing compliance cost for companies in the form of various fees which have to be paid. Because as Mr. Shekhar also mentioned, for us professionals, there is no CSR. Even if we do any work, we have to still charge the companies, or even for some impact assessment, utilization and all those things where our help will be required. We will definitely have to charge the fees. Companies cannot tell us this is honorary work. So for companies, it is a cost. And these will be in the form of administrative overheads for those companies, where again they need to keep a track that it cannot exceed 5%. If it exceeds 5%, fine, but it would not be considered as an eligible CSR spend. So you will have to then incur more expense. So it is a chicken and egg situation. See, there will be a lot of specialized departments which companies may have to set up with experienced professionals, especially where the CSR spending is much larger. So this is broadly how professionalism will result, mainly because of a proper policy and strategies have to be aligned. You need to employ a lot of professionals, plus a lot of outside specialized and external agencies you need to you need to appoint. So all this is part of professionalism. The broad professional dimensions we will be discussing in the later part, really, those are the actual practical aspects what are there. We will be discussing those later. Now we come to transparency. Naturally, in any business, there will always be transparency which will be there. See, the Act and the rules already contain various provisions which would bring about transparency, like displaying the CSR policy approved by the board of directors on the website. Then certain additional disclosures which we saw earlier, like the composition of the committee, the type of projects which are approved, and so on. The board report also has to have detailed disclosures. There is a specific annexure to the board of directors report which is there. So that is something which will also result in transparency. Now, connected with transparency, there are certain other related aspects also, especially for listed companies. SEBI also has been recommending a lot of disclosures, and the top 500 companies now recently, I think it has been increased to 1,000 companies also, if I recollect. There is to be a business responsibility report. These are the large listed companies in terms of market capitalization. So this business responsibility report is something which is much broader than the CSR. So the CSR related aspects also, the CSR initiatives and the amount spent have also to be included as part of business responsibility report. So now this again, for the companies, there may be a duplication and information overload. See, there is a flip side also to transparency. You may disclose more, but at the same time, you may divulge a lot of information, and then other people may approach you. You are giving so much donation to X individual or X NGO for these projects. So why are you not giving it to me? So this may result in undue pressure on companies also. So these are some of the disadvantages also of transparency. Greater transparency is always good, but sometimes it may have a lot of negative implications or a lot of negative connotations. Because see, there will be people who may then want, you have given so much of a donation to X, so why can't you give so much to me? So on. See, many times we as individuals also face this situation, because now all these NGOs and all are very well networked. They get the contact details. So if they know that I have given some donation to X NGO, they will, some other NGOs will also contact me and they will say, no, you have given it to this, why are you not giving it to me? You keep on getting these pestering phone calls also sometimes. So similar things may also, companies may also have to face similar situations. Okay, so that is as far as transparency is concerned. Now, employee benefits. As I said, see, earlier companies would equate CSR with providing employee benefits like housing, education, medical benefits. They are now no longer considered as CSR activities in the revised guidelines, subject to, of course, certain relaxations which have been proposed, which we saw earlier. In the form of housing, education, and medical benefit. So companies have to go much beyond their employees as far as CSR benefits are concerned. Now, see, the question arises is that if you undertake any social service activities by the employees, not represented by actual spending, that will also not be considered. Suppose your employees do volunteering work. They put in a certain number of hours of service, free voluntary service on the prescribed CSR activities. That is which is not considered to fall within CSR. The way the amendments are also there, I don't think these are considered. This is one of the forms of CSR spending which may be considered. Maybe you have to monetize the value of those. Suppose a certain number of hours you do depending upon the cost of those employees to the company on an hourly basis. Such social service also, the time which you spend should also be monetized and considered as an employee, as a CSR activity, but that is unfortunately not done. So there is no incentive for employees of companies to engage in voluntary activities. They may do it still out of love and affection and out of passion, but the companies may not be able to really claim that as part of CSR activities. Then politicization. Donations to political parties are not covered. However, see, what could happen is the CSR mandate could lead to certain forms of indirect contributions to political parties. They may be forced to incur towards the CSR spend through the organizations where there is some political patronage or in areas of specific interest to local political parties. That is something which is bound to happen. So officially you say you do not contribute to a political party, but some Netaji or somebody politician may force you that you pay to so and so because I have some connections with that company or that organization or that NGO. So wherever there is a political patronage or in certain areas where they have specific interests, we all notice. So this indirectly politicization could come in. Only contributions to the Prime Minister's National Relief Fund and to the Swachh Bharat Course and Clean Ganga Fund and all that are permissible avenues for CSR spend. Even certain COVID-related amendments, PM CARES Fund, for example, has come in. Contributions to that are all considered as eligible CSR spends. So this is where politicization ends. So this is where I have just very, very briefly touched upon the different paradigms which could be there. So many things can happen because of the amendments to CSR, ranging from commercialization to politicization. Now, the professional part, because ultimately we are professionals, and mainly because of the CSR, there will be greater professionalism. So let us look at the various professional dimensions in CSR. From an organization's perspective, there will have to be a lot of restructuring and reorganization. There will be a lot of job opportunities which will be there. People who are socially inclined, especially people who are senior and who are retired or semi-retired, can devote a lot more time to these sort of activities. Specialized and external agencies, you will need their help and you will need training and education. So let us now go through some of these aspects, because these are the practical things which will emerge and arise as an offshoot of the CSR activities, and which have already, I mean, all of you, some of you all would have noticed this also as part of your practice or as part of your employment with the companies and all that. See now this again, the internal restructuring can be divided into three broad. The role of the board of directors. The board of directors play an important role. Then the finance, accounting and commercial personnel also play an important role. Then compliance personnel also, company secretary, legal and professional, and of course chartered accountants also collectively referred to as the compliance personnel. So now what will be the, how will the role of each of these change? How will they have to restructure or reorganize their functions and activities? Let us look at. The board of directors, again, there will be a collective role, and then their role as a managing or executive director and the role of independent directors. The collective role again is setting the tone at the top. Ultimately, the board of directors look at everything right at the top. They need to set out the policy, strategy, vision, mission. So all this is equally relevant as far as CSR is concerned. We'll see how. Operational roles and responsibilities are also there. And then there is also the risk assessment which they need to do. See, there is always certain risks which are connected with CSR spending, which we will see. It is not only in the business, but even in CSR, there may be some risks which are there. What could those risks be? We will look at it. So there has to be a proper policy, proper direction, proper tone at the top. Otherwise, there can be distractions, loss of brand value. There may be lawsuits, there may be commercial challenges. See, it has to look at the activities and its impact on the society, on the environment, on the various stakeholders. It should not compromise with its core values. So the compliance should be in spirit rather than in letter. So these are all broad things at the 10,000 degree level, 10,000 feet level, if I may say so, which need to be taken care of. You cannot, for example, support immoral activities or support things which are not environmentally friendly. So those are all aspects which need to be kept in mind. So this is the tone at the top now, operational roles and responsibilities. See, the most important thing is all arising out of the rules. You have to form a committee, formulate a CSR policy, CSR strategy, identify the projects and the implementation roadmap, monitoring the performance and impact and the reporting framework. This is the most important part really, and the most important role of the board of directors. Now let us look at each of these also. What are the things which need to be taken care of? See, CSR committee. See, any committee when you constitute, especially a board level committee, you have to look at various things. You have to ensure that the members have the proper background and knowledge to be able to function as members. There has to be a proper mix of independent and non-independent directors. See, the regulations, the way they stand now, only require appointment of one independent director. There is, however, nothing which prohibits you to have a majority of independent directors. So that is always a good practice. So these are some of the aspects which the board has to collectively take a decision. See, there should not be any conflict of interest. For example, when they are discharging their CSR role, they should not be a trustee or a governing member of an NPO or an NGO, which is an implementing agency or which provides other external services. So you should not be a trustee or a board member, say, of a Lions or a Rotary Club. If you are using the, if you want to use the services of that club as an implementing agency, for example, and if you are also on the board of directors of that company. See, these are things which currently are not specified. These may only have to be looked at in the context of the related party transactions, which all of them may not follow within the purview of 177 and 188. But the committee still and the board, when they lay down the policies, they should ensure that they have to a policy of not having a conflict of interest. See, these are all individual aspects softer aspects which all need to be taken care of, which maybe sometimes people may not apply their mind. Maybe some of these things may be correct as per the letter of the law, but it may not be correct and may not be in consonance with the spirit of the laws and regulations. So those are things which have to be looked at. See, composition of the committee, there has to be a maturity model. Now, when we say maturity model, what is that? See, you have to see the overall experience of your committee members. Do you have a proper mature committee? There has to be a proper mix of experienced individuals along with the youngsters or the newcomers who are more in tune with the current ideas. See, there is nothing which prohibits you to have outside specialists or even invite outside specialists to be a board members or to be as advisors. So case of corporates has a very large budget. They may also appoint some advisor or invite some advisor also to come to the board. There has to be a proper written charter. See, the Companies Act talks about audit committee charter. It does not talk about the CSR committee charter. So what is it that the CSR committee needs to do? So that charter also can be laid down. So that is also an important aspect. Laying down a protocol for accountability of the committee to the board. Ultimately, the committee has to be accountable. So the written charter will have to cover all those aspects. What are the broad areas? How is the conflict of interest to be? Whether to what extent you may need outside people? What should be the mix of the members? What should be the broad areas, authority metrics, delegation metrics, so on and so forth, the normal things which would be there in any other board charter or an audit committee charter. That there should also be a written charter for the CSR committee also. So these are all very critical, important and practical aspects which need to be kept in mind. Then the CSR committee, the composition of the committee and its terms of reference. So the charter or the terms of reference is what should be there. We'll look at it. As I said, see, there is no maximum limit specified. Only requirement is that you have to have one independent director. So now, one of the factors which you need to look at is, see, let us all face it, that quite a lot of the companies, the CSR proposals and the CSR projects and the CSR spending is always at the mercy of the promoters and the controlling shareholders. We all agree that that is a practical scenario. So that is something which can result in compromising on the objectivity and independence of the CS activities and make it open to abuse. And this has to be avoided, especially in case of listed or public interest entities. So these are some of the aspects which need to be kept in mind when you select the members, when you decide on the composition of your committee. It is always better, as I said, to have more of independent directors. See, in the initial period, it will be difficult to find more and more people, independent directors. So in the initial years, maybe a lot of them CSR implementation was at the mercy of the promoters. But going forward, suitable amendments should be made. See, there have been various amendments which are made, but some of these other amendments are also still required. See, because audit committee and some other committees mandatorily require majority of independent directors. In my view, even suitable amendments should be made that the CSR committee composition also should be such that the majority of the members are independent directors on the same lines as required for the audit committee. See, there is another interesting question whether KMPs should be part of the committee. When we say KMPs is whether a managing director or an executive director or a company secretary may act as the secretary of the committee. whether the CFO, managing director, executive director should be there. Currently, there is no mandatory bar. 135 subsection 1 does not say who should be there. So there is nothing wrong if one or more KMPs are members of the committee. However, to ensure the independence, the KMPs ideally, in my view, should not have voting rights. So this is also one of the areas where the regulators may consider laying down appropriate guidelines. So this is also another aspect. See, these are some of these aspects which are there, which practically have to be kept in mind. When you also want to advise your companies in setting up proper CSR protocols as professionals and advisors, these are various aspects which you need to keep in mind. Now, currently, it does not distinguish whether private, public, or whatever. The only criteria is what is your turnover or what is your net worth or net profit. So the CSR is not a function of the type or structure of the company. See, now, of course, there are these recent amendments which have been made that if you do not have an independent director or if your CSR spending is less than a certain amount, you need not constitute a CSR committee. So to that extent, some of these earlier provisions now will get diluted, and it would at least reduce the burden for the private limited companies or companies who do not have too much of public interest. See, there is another interesting aspect which is also there. See, I don't know, I mean, few of you may be aware. See, generally, the articles of association, see, this is something which Mr. J.R.D. Tata had always envisaged. Now, that is something which is there in a lot of books, which is there, and it is also there, I think, in the public domain on the website of the Tata companies, that the articles of association include that social responsibility is one of the aspects. This is something which was envisaged by Mr. J.R.D. Tata, and this would also be a good practice for corporates to include the various aspects of the CSR obligations, like the constitution of the committee, composition, minimum and maximum number of directors, and so on. So this will give greater clarity and transparency, because as you all know, any amendments or changes in the articles and memorandum of association require the shareholders' consent. So this is also one of the amendments to Schedule 1 of the Act by suggested model clauses to be included. As you all know, you have the schedules to the Act which lay down the model articles of association. So maybe some model clauses could be laid down. So one of the form of making amendments to the operational matters, like the maximum, minimum number of members, type of composition, and so on, could be by incorporating certain model rules and regulations in the articles which companies should adopt. So this is also one of the other aspects which is important, which is there. See, foreign companies, including those which may not necessarily have a physical presence, have to also comply with the requirements. Though, of course, there are specific rules which are there, but still there may be challenges in effective compliance for foreign companies. See, another aspect of the composition of the committee is how many minimum number of meetings you need to hold. This is also again an aspect which is not specifically and explicitly indicated. Only if you read section 135(3) Roman 3C, it requires that the company has to meet at least once in a year to basically review and monitor the CSR policy for time to time, even if it does not have to mandatorily spend. So here also, this is again another area where some guidelines could be laid down for holding a minimum of 2 meetings during a calendar or financial year. So as you see, even in terms of this committee, there are so many matters. The guidelines and the rules are there. There is commercialization and all that, but there are various other areas also where there could be some abuse which need to be plugged by appropriate amendments over a period of time. I think probably appropriate, see, these are all requirements which are for the good. So maybe Companies may not like it. See, the existing companies are happy with the existing amendments. But as professionals, you may wish to advise your companies to help implement CSR in a more professional manner. So you may suggest some of these aspects. Now we come on to the terms of reference. See, terms of reference is very clear: to formulate and recommend and to CSR policy, and to recommend the amount and to monitor. So this is something which is very clear. Now, what should be there as far as the CSR policy is concerned? Has to be in line with the core business, with the core competency, with the activities which the company is undertaking. See, for example, Hindustan Unilever has started that washing hands campaign. This is connected with its core competency, though again it is doubtful whether it is to help promote its own business, say promote the soaps which it is making. But at least it is inculcating something. Or ITC also, by educating the farmers about the type of crops and all that which they need to use. So these are all, I mean, core competencies. TCS may probably help in the greater digitization. So that is part of their core competency. So these, most of the times, the CSR activities emerge out of the core business objectives and the core competencies. They should also be in line with the expectations of the various stakeholders, your suppliers, your customers, the regulatory authorities, everything. It should also result in enhancing of the brand and the reputation of the company. Very important. It has to be, the strategy has to be in line with the vision and mission. The requirements under the act and rules have to be also kept in mind. So these are all the broad things. See, some of the specific strategic and policy frameworks. Preference needs to be given to local areas. What are the various implementation schedules? Then activities not in the normal course, not in normal course of business, not to be included. Activities outside India, exclusively for employees, political parties. See, these are all things which we all know are laid down in the rules. So while you are formulating a strategic policy framework, you need to keep these regulatory aspects in mind, apart from, of course, certain other aspects. Pooling and collaboration is permissible, provided the individual companies are able to report separately. Outsourcing of CSR activities to NGOs and implementing agencies who have an established track record. See, now we talked about the social service dimension. See, companies can undertake capacity building of their own personnel. Now, when we say capacity building of their own personnel, this is essentially more in terms of the training to the personnel to enable them to undertake the social service activities. See, because dealing with the marginalized sections or carrying out the social activities needs certain special skills. So there has to be undertaking the capacity building activity, what sort of training and all that will need to be provided. All those are things which need to be looked at. We have to ensure that the training budget does not exceed 5%, or if it exceeds 5%, it will not be considered as an eligible CSR spend. So mainly, as we see, this policy and strategic framework is all matters which primarily arise out of the various rules and provisions which are laid down. So these are the aspects which need to be broadly taken care of. Identifying projects and laying down their implementation roadmap. Projects also should be in terms of areas or activities under Schedule 7. What are the timelines? Distinguishing between ongoing and other projects, that is also important. Who will be your project implementation partners? Who will be doing the work for you? Guidelines for implementation, especially for the ongoing projects which are going to be spread over more than 2 years. So all these, as you say, see, these are all things which you normally do even as part of your business activities. These are all similar things which you also need to do as part of your CSR activities also. So there is no rocket science involved in any of these. These are all things which are common sense, but which you need to be aware and you need to focus on, and you need to advise your company is more important. Location of projects. See, normally it should be based on a sound gap assessment, areas where your offices or plants are located. What extent it will be urban, backward, tribal areas. The number of projects would depend upon the funds available, the geographic spread, the implementing agencies available. See, the localized implementing agencies and NGOs are better focused on their respective areas, so it is better to implement them. The extent or proportion of contingency funds to be kept aside for meeting requirements arising out of unforeseen contingencies. This is also an important aspect, that some budget you need to keep aside for a rainy day. See, nobody would have anticipated COVID last year at this time, but now after 1 year it is a reality. So these are some other contingencies also similarly companies may encounter, like some floods or tsunamis or earthquakes or whatever, some major natural disasters. So you need to keep funds available for that. So identifying projects not only involves the location aspects, but also the number of projects. And then what are the projects which you need to select? Who are the intended beneficiaries, whether they are women, whether they are children, whether they are unemployed youth, people who are suffering from certain diseases. It all depends upon that. The viability, feasibility, whether it is a one-time project or whether recurring, whether nature of capacity building required, what sort of specialized training or efforts to deal with those marginalized sections. You need specific type of people to deal with them, to get down really to their level and to explain things to them, to convince them of certain things, because the rural people, the lower level people have certain mindsets. So they may not be open to all the changes also. So we need to keep all these factors in mind. So implementing projects is, you have to have in-house training, or you may have outside implementation agencies. So through specialized implementation agencies or through its own, through the capacity building. So if it is implementing projects through implementation agencies, you need to look at their legal and registration status, their track record, their financial soundness. So it is again like any normal due diligence which you would do of a vendor, for selection of a vendor. Similar factors you need to keep in mind, because they are going to ultimately partner you. Your name and reputation will be at stake. So you need to ensure that they are of proper, they meet the proper criteria, the pedigree is good, then everything is there. Evaluating the technical and managerial expertise. You need to ensure that there is a proper MOU which clarifies the roles and responsibilities on various aspects, like the project selection criteria, how funds would be dispersed, utilization of the funds through audited statements. Now I think they have said that implementation and monitoring above 5 crore spending, if it is there, through proper collaboration should be there. So all these aspects have to be taken care of when you are implementing the projects. The proper monitoring and an impact assessment has to be done. The cost benefit analysis, whether any external help would be required in conducting, now that would be mandatory if the spending is above a certain limit. So these are all other separate aspects. How do you do the monitoring? That is also compliance of the condition, sanction letter and the MOU is to be seen. Certificate of utilization of previously released funds. See, you would have, some of you would have seen the advisory which the institute has also come out with, in terms of how to serve the certification needs to be done for the utilization of the funds and how the report has to be given. So you may refer to that. So this is how it will help. The physical progress. Monitoring through a tabular milestone grid. I will discuss that. What is that? Then this you can use it. I mean, you can take the help of accounting and auditing firms, which the ICAI also, as I was telling you, has issued guidance. Engineering and technical firms to look at the technical aspects. Sustainability service firms also, if you wish, at a much broader level. Some companies which are into various advanced things. So this is how a monitoring has to be done. See now this monitoring, internal monitoring, how do you do it? Just taking a simple example, I will just take you. Say for example, you have a project. Prevention of blindness is one of the projects. You are, say, a healthcare company manufacturing eye drops or whatever. So you are doing prevention of blindness. So how do you do a tabular milestone grid? What is the expected impact is what you first determine. So the expected impact is the improvement of the overall life of the community, say for example, if you want to prevent blindness. What is the agreed outcomes? See, if you improve the overall life, the outcome will be less blindness means people will be able to lead a better quality of life, then they would be able to earn better. So there would be enhanced income, agreed outcome. The output is you lay down that the increase in the monthly income may be, say, from 5 to 25%. You look at the overall situation and see how much it should be. So these are the outcomes, and then you see the baseline, midline, and endline indicators. Comparison of the actual targets. So you have to now measure how much as because of reduction of the blindness by taking care, by taking preventive measures, by ensuring people put proper eye drops, people cataract and all is determined on a timely basis and treatment is done and so on and so forth. Over the period, how much basically more employment has been provided to such people, how have they been able to improve their standard of living and income levels. You estimate it against a period ranging from 1 to 5 years, depending upon what is the parameters which you have laid down. So this is just a simple thing. So now all these specialized firms, agencies and all that will help you. So one is basically through a tabular milestone grid, how you do an impact assessment. Any impact assessment is essentially environmental, social or life cycle. This is just very broadly, which is there. See, reporting framework also is important in line with the various statutory requirements and all that information which is credible and relevant. There should not be too much overkill also. Transparency is there, but at the same time, there should not be overkill, duplication and all that. So these are all the factors which you need to keep in mind. See, the business responsibility reporting framework is there. Some companies are now even giving integrated reports, sustainability reports. So, I mean, we have to balance and see that there has to be proper linking, cross-referencing and all that should be there so that there is no duplication. Risk assessment, now risks from the stakeholders' perspective and the business risks. Let us spend some time now on looking at the various type of risks. See, from the stakeholders' perspective, see, one of the biggest risks is lack of transparent and effective communication, inadequate investor servicing, performance and inadequate corporate governance mechanisms. You may do CSR, but at the same time, there will be a drain on the resources and you do not communicate effectively with them. Non-compliance with statutory requirements and lack of transparency in disclosures, that is the government and regulatory authorities. For the customers, what are the key risks and challenges? Products and services of poor quality, safety norms not adhered to, uncompetitive pricing, inadequate or misleading advertisements or information on products and services. These are all the risks from the stakeholders. When you engage in these sort of activities, these are the risks to the stakeholders. Then also employees, lack of concern on their health and safety, compensation not paid properly. Media also lack of transparency and disclosures. Suppose there is some spillage and all that. So automatically adverse publicity, irresponsible corporate citizenship, falling reputation, unsafe products, irresponsible corporate citizenship, pollution of the environment. See, these are all the risks from the key risks from the stakeholders' perspective. What are the specific business risks? As I said, see, managers, promoters, and shareholders grab a major portion of the CSR. Political interference is a big business risk. We looked at that politicization. Lack of professionalism and awareness on the part of the NGOs. So that is where you don't do a proper diligence before selecting and implementing agency. So this could lead to misappropriation and misuse of funds. Inadequate capacity building and training measures. These are also specific business risks which could be there. And last, very important, hopefully has not come in still and hopefully won't come in, class action suits. Somebody files a suit, a group of shareholders or a group of activists, that you have done something wrong, some environmental degradation and those sort of things. So possibility of class action suits. Then you have the role of the managing or executive director. See, where a managing or executive director is there, see, he basically would lead to delegation of authority. See, if so, then basically there would be proper delegation of authority and he would have to report regularly to the board. So to what extent you delegate and what extent the managing and executive director would be responsible needs to be kept in mind. See, many times this results in he wears two hats. He has to ensure that there is no conflict of interest. He has to sometimes, especially if he is a member of the CSR committee, because as we saw earlier, there is nothing which prohibits KMPs from being members of CSR committees. Now, company, if it has more than one executive director or managing director or manager, who is the director responsible for CSR activities? That has to be clearly identified. You have to also give disclosures for that. Independent directors have a collective and an individual role. First part is no conflict of interest. As I mentioned earlier, employed in a CSR role, whether as an employee, auditor, or consultant in subsidiary companies. Involved in the provision of advice or consulting services, and the fees exceed a certain percentage. Directly involved with the supplier of a company which provides CSR related services. So again, board has to lay down appropriate criteria to ascertain the circumstances whereby, in their opinion, there could arise a situation where there will be a conflict of interest. Many times, as I said, discussed earlier, regulators could also lay down guidelines. So these are at a collective role primarily to ensure that there are no conflicts of interest. Individual role as members of the CSR committee. See, they would normally, as things stand now, they are normally in a minority. So essentially the promoters call the shots. So they have a very difficult individual role to play unless they are really very, very strong and influential and are able to browbeat the promoters, especially when they feel that things are not proper. They should not be yes men. So this is where, again, as I had mentioned earlier, some regulatory guidelines could be laid down, like they have for the audit committee. See, one of the individual directors should have expertise and experience in social service activities. Companies should also encourage independent directors to attend seminars and training programs and all that by specialized agencies. Stock exchanges also conduct programs targeted at independent directors so that they understand their role. Finance and accounting personnel assessing the funds, doing a due diligence. See, we are all familiar with all these things, so I will not go into much detail. Impact assessment, monitoring, we have seen all this. Role of the compliance personnel, what they need to do. Determining whether the correct parameters of turnover, net worth and all is correctly calculated to help you to determine whether you are covered. Proper inclusions and exclusions while calculating. Coordinating with finance and accounting personnel so that the information is obtained on an ongoing basis. CSR committee, whether there is a proper constitution of the CSR committee, qualifications and experience, whether you need to invite outside people. The committee needs to be formed even if one of the applicability triggers are there, but there is no net profit. Those CSR spending. So if your net worth is in excess, but you do not have net profits, you may not have to spend on CSR, but you still need to form the CSR committee. Terms of reference, the number of meetings, compliance with the secretarial standards. See, all those aspects need to be kept in mind. Whether the quorum, the act is again silent on the quorum for the meetings. You need to refer to the secretarial standards on board meetings. That committee meetings, normally all members should constitute a quorum unless the articles lay down. So this is also one of the things where the articles of association should lay down the rules which I discussed earlier. Then the decisions of the board should be minuted and necessary resolutions should be passed with the requisite majority. Advising the board on the various activities which need to be undertaken, whether in project or program mode. One-off events would not be considered. Disputes or differences, legal advice may need to be considered as to whether certain things are covered or not covered as a CSR activity or not. Documentation, terms of reference, MOUs, budgets, and all those documents need to be, so these documentation complying with the statutory provisions. Reporting also, getting the information from the various departments and ensuring that the data for the annual report and website, and that needs to be put up to the committee and then to the board. See, now these are some job opportunities and all. We'll just quickly run through that. I think these slides are also given. I think you can look at it. See, CSR or Chief Sustainability Officer, basically companies can employ as a rank of director, president, vice president. So this is all CSR responsibilities, developing the strategies, conducting research, impact assessment, and all those other things. Program manager for individual programs, especially companies which have a large setup to ensure implementation of projects in a uniform manner. So these are all the normal. CSR fundraising manager. This is more relevant for NGOs, not for the companies, because normally it is the NGOs who look for the funds from the company's CSR budgets. So that's how they need to approach and all that. Communications manager, the strategy has to be communicated. So these are some of the things which you can look at it, I think. Recruitment process, acting as internal and external representatives for the company's CSR policies or projects. At least all the benefits are communicated. Then you have specialized implementing agencies which are there. You need to look at the various factors and all that. These are all normal things like your documentation, credentials, technical skills. Corporate foundations, which contributes to foundations which have recognized their governance structure monitoring. See, there are disadvantages because corporate foundations are generally group companies. So again, there may not be proper governance structures, may be there, may not be there. So these are all factors which need to be considered. Then expected impacts, agreed outcomes, and all. This is where engineering and technical services firms may sometimes have to be involved in physical terms if the impact has to be measured. Sustainability service firms is where basically you need to prepare advanced reports and all that. This will be more going forward when integrated reporting, ESG reporting and all will come in. So maybe that is also one of the areas which would be there. Audit and compliance. As a statutory auditor, you need to follow the guidance note. See, there is a concept of constructive obligation because disclosures in the board report and website, where the provision needs to be made for unspent amount. If you have made adequate disclosures that these are the projects which have been identified and disclosed on the website, this is more in the context of Ind AS requirements. Then all the standards on auditing which are there, You have to communicate to those charged with governance if the laws and regulations are not followed. Risk assessment, we have seen the risk assessment part. Guidance note on CSR expenses, I am sure all of you are already familiar, so I'm not going into that. Internal auditors and consultants also have a role, developing the CSR strategy, advising on the proper constitution of the committee, implementing agencies, project parameters, monitoring, impact assessment, and all that. So I think this is essentially all from me. I think the presentation would have been circulated, so some of the things you may go through in detail later on. I've tried to cover the important aspects and give you a flavor, a practical flavor. So maybe we can take some questions for about 10-15 minutes. Yes.
Well, let me see if there are any questions which have come, sir, actually.
Yes.
Yeah, there are few which have come. I'll put it on the screen.
Okay.
Just give me a moment.
It's too small, I think.
Yeah, I'll read it, sir. Can a company having its own R&D division in food and beverages book capital expenditure incurred in purchase of land for R&D purpose under CSR expenditure obligation? If allowed, whether it can carry over the excess spent to future years? CA Dhanapandi Vivekananda. Dandapani
First
Vivekananda.
of all, I think food and beverages. Now, first of all, this R&D activities have to be in respect of areas which are specified in Schedule 7. So it is not clear as to what these R&D activities are for. And food and beverages, I don't think they would really, first of all, come within the purview of CSR. See, science, unless it is to some organization, it has to be followed that it comes within the purview of Schedule 7. So R&D have to be for scientific research and all that, to incubators or to universities or recognized institutions which are specified in Schedule 7. So unless, first of all, whether it comes within that has to be seen. Otherwise, I don't think you can even consider that as CSR expenditure. Then the question of carry forward doesn't arise. So I don't think, R&D division of food and all that, I don't think that really can come as a CSR expenditure. Unless, there is some specific COVID related, I think, things which you are doing, but I don't think that will still come, a little far-fetched. Yeah, next.
Okay, next, sir. If a company A is spending CSR funds through Section 8 company, and if Section 8 company is unable to spend entire CSR funds in that relevant year, what would be the implications on company A and Section 8
As of
company?
now, there are no implications. As of now, it is only comply or report. But going forward, I think if they are not able to spend it, first of all, it is for what project? If it is for an ongoing project, then there is a 3-year time frame. If within the 3-year time frame they don't spend it, then it has to be transferred to that special fund. So now, as of now, as things stand now, there is nothing. You may have to just report. But going forward, I think there will be, you will have to ensure that it is spent, or otherwise, if it is unspent, and if it is, say, in excess of certain 50 crores and all that, you have to get a report, audited report, utilization certificate, monitoring has to be done and all that. Impact assessment and all those things have to be now looked at. So people just contributing directly now to their foundation and sitting tight now, that won't be permissible going forward. Even now it is not permissible, but at least even if you haven't done anything, you could get away.
Let me see if there are any additional questions which have come. Yeah, I'm just checking the last time once if there are anything come. In fact, few members are asking about the presentation. It is available in the handout. If you're not able to download there, just check the chat box. I have given the links there also. I will maybe share it again. Okay.
Yeah, you can share the presentation, especially the last part. See, I have not gone into much detail because those are just general, more for knowledge. what sort of things and all are
Okay.
there. It's all a repetition, but just put it maybe more for the future reference of the members.
Okay, so you can see the chat box where I've given the link also. And alternatively, we'll be placing this also in the SARC website later under the past programs category. Sir, one
Yeah,
last
you
question. Can a manufacturing company gift its own products for charity and claim under CSR expenditure?
No, I think even the institute guidance note also states, I think. Now I think it cannot, I think part of the business, it is for your own business. I don't think that is permissible. That is not in the spirit. No.
I think those were the only questions, Zubin sir. Thank you so
Okay.
much. Sundays are always special and bright, and you made it more brighter and special today with your excellent and lucid address. Abhishek, over to you to propose the formal vote of thanks.
Thank you so much, Chairman. Zubin sir, truly wonderful presentation. A lot of practical examples went to the matter of the composition of board and how we should be planning for the CSR. In fact, answering the questions, I think a couple of the questions that came, even though there were few, they are very practical. Many people would have had the same doubts. So thank you so much for your time, very valuable time and a wonderful presentation. We hope to invite you personally as well. Once things open up, we'd love to have you in Chennai,
or if
or
you
in the
are in
southern
Bombay,
region.
sometime both of you would love to meet up with both of you all. If you all come to Bombay anytime, just feel free to
Thank you.
give me a call. And especially if you come to your maternal home or something in Churchgate, it's very nearby
Yes,
for me.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much. So kind of you.
Yes, yes, certainly.
Thank you, sir.
My pleasure. I
And
think I enjoyed it. And the
Thank you so
presentation,
much.
you can just please put it in your website or whatever, no restrictions at all. I don't believe in keeping any restrictions on knowledge. There are
Thank you,
certain
sir.
people who are hesitant to share their presentations and all that. I'm not that type. And for this book and all that, if anybody is interested, anything, please let me know. Then I can work out, especially if you have a reasonable number of members who are interested.
We'll reach out, sir, based on the requests. If any coming, we'll reach out to
Yes.
you and BCA, sir. Actually, definitely, sir. Definitely.
Yes, yes, definitely. I mean, that I can always work out something. Definitely.
Thank you so much, sir. So kind of you.
Thank you very
And I
much.
thank all the participants for taking time on your Sunday to join in for this very important session. Have a happy weekend. Stay home, stay safe, take care. Please do
Yes.
join us for our future programs. We have a program again tomorrow. It's a 3-hour program at 5 p.m. to 8 p.m. on auditing standards. Followed by, we have a memorial lecture, the Guru Raj Upadhyay Memorial Lecture. So we request everyone to please join for the same as well. So the future programs, we have many programs lined up. We have hosted the same on our website of SARC. Please do join in, please do register in advance. We have tried to put as many free programs as possible so that members can attend. I request all of you to please do register, because the registrations get full very quickly. And given the tax audit and income tax filing due dates are now over, we will see more traffic also follow. So stay home, stay safe, everybody. I thank our chairman, especially CA Dungarchand Jain, and once again I'd like to thank our speaker, CA Zubin sir. So thank you all.
Thank you very much. Stay safe, stay healthy, and God bless you all. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So I'll disconnect now.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes.